All right, let me get to my guest. He's a former Minister of State for Health. He's a former Soroti Municipality MP. Currently, he's NRM Vice Chairperson, but he's also a retired pilot. Captain Mike Mukula. Good evening, and thank you for joining us today.
It is my pleasure being with you and being on NTV.
All right, for starters, you are not opposed to, the revampment of Uganda Airlines, and I agree with you. I think it would be a good thing that we have a national carrier in the skies, for pride and whatever the case might be. But aside from the other concerns that you have, my first question is, can we afford this? I think it's a good thing that we get to have a national carrier, but can we afford it? Very quick figures. Uganda's GDP is $25.5 billion. That's according to the World Bank.
Right.
GDP per capita, $615. The National Planning Authority says that initial capital expenditure, for this project to take off is $400 million US. That's about 1.4 trillion Uganda shillings. So away from the excitement that we get to have a national airlines in the skies, can we afford this?
No, we can afford it. Why? Because Uganda is a landlocked country. That's number one. We must have the advantage, we must have the opportunity to take advantage of road, railway, and the water transport. That's number one. The air transport is part of the national transport strategy or infrastructure. If we can spend $480 million for Entebbe Express Highway, and we also spend another close to $380 million on expanding the current airport, why can't we get our national airline, a flag carrier, to be able to carry out passengers out of Entebbe to various destinations, and take into account that the shortest and nearest route that we have, Entebbe-Nairobi, is the most expensive short route in the world.
And allow airline make it cheaper. Because the other question, you talk about the different roads for which we have got money to build.
Right.
You see, these are loans, honorable. This is money that your children, your grandchildren, hopefully not your great-grandchildren will have to pay. So if we now dig deeper into loans, are we not accumulating, are we not biting off a lot more than we can chew?
No. You must understand that, first of all, we have a comparative advantage. 48% of East Africa's arable land is in Uganda. We now must take advantage of that comparative advantage and have the export of flowers, all the horticulture, the fruits, and so on and so forth. And we need capacity at the local level to be able to evacuate the flowers, the horticulture, and so on to various destinations in Europe and the Far East. Let's look at it this way. Ethiopian Airlines has dedicated a 777, 100 tons, to uplift their flowers out of Ethiopia into European market. And you want to know that Ethiopia is either the first or second largest exporter of flowers into in the world market. Now, we can be able to export more and at the same time earn that money. Second thing is that tourism. Uganda has got is naturally endowed. We are within the equator where you have very excellent weather. We have 5 of the best game parks in the African continent, possibly in the world. We were recently voted the best tourist destination in the world.
Can't these tourists come on all these other flights altogether?
You need to bring them on board. Let's look at it this way. A desert in Emirates, United Arab Emirates, Dubai, has been able to transform itself to be one of the best tourist destinations out of nowhere from a desert. Emirates, the flag carrier for United Arab Emirates there, carries is now this, Dubai is now, I think, the second or the first largest destination in terms of traffic inflows in the whole world. Second, the transit duty-free shop in Dubai earns close to $38 billion US every year. You can Google that and check. That shows you that if we take advantage of tourism, if we take advantage of our comparative advantage in agriculture, Uganda needs a national airline.
The other suggestion that you raise is that CAA, that's Civil Aviation Authority, should be split into two, and an autonomous body be created to run the public airports and airfields.
Right.
And I'm thinking, do we need to keep splitting and creating schisms within government? Because if you have competent people that are deliberate about doing a good job, making sure there's value for money, we don't need to keep splitting and splitting. Because you see, at the end of the day, what the splitting of many departments does, because you're just creating jobs for, you know, people's mothers and children, and many times for those within the system. So can we not make sure that the current one that is in place does a competent job? If they fail, we fire them. But if we keep creating, this has failed, so let's create another body, let's create another body. When shall we end with this, Honorable?
ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is an offspring of United Nations, created in 1944 in Chicago, is to carry out what you call oversight function to ensure that you have safe flights and so on and so forth all over the world. And this is a global body. Let me get you to understand one point, that there is what you call best practices. Recently, I think 2014, June the 17th, they carried out what you call an audit on the performance of the Civil Aviation Authority of Uganda. And they found that in most of the areas, Uganda performed dismally. In order to ensure that the recommendations that were submitted to Uganda were adhered to, certain amendments had to be done to the Civil Aviation Act. Now, there is what you call the best practices. In terms of performance, in the whole entire region, let's look at Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, and Ethiopia. Kenya had a performance of about 78% out of 100.
Is it because they've created many bodies?
I'll tell you what it is.
My time is running up.
Okay. Rwanda had 72%. You had Tanzania at 68%. Uganda at 61%, the lowest in the region. Kenya, in terms of its performance, has had and has what you call separated the two bodies.
But you know what they do? They hire competent people and they fire them when they fail to deliver. They have performance contracts. We don't have that here.
They have what you call the Airports Authority, and they have the Civil Aviation Authority. The same in Tanzania, the same in Ethiopia, and the same in Rwanda, and even in Britain, Singapore, and United States. The point I'm trying to say, and I want to put across, is that we need to adopt best practices. Two, we need to ensure that a regulator cannot be regulating himself. You need to separate the functions. We earn a lot of money from landing, navigation charges, and so on and so forth. We have overflights that will go through Uganda. And I want to tell you that we have close to 180 flights that land into Entebbe every day. We earn this money, including the UN. 120 of them are commercial. What you need to put into order is to ensure that right now you try to manage the airports. Let me give you a very...
I'm glad you talk about management, because perhaps that's our biggest challenge, that we are not good managers. We don't ensure that there is value for money, that work gets done. So, Honorable, I assure you, even if we created 10 departments, if we don't hire competent people, if we don't supervise the people that we hire to make sure they deliver, it will be zero.
I agree with you, but we need to adhere and put together what you call systems in place. Once you have a system and you train the people and you benchmark them, you go into key performance indicators, I'm very sure that you're bound to get results.
Okay. This conversation will continue. We'll keep seeing how things are, how things do play out, and we hope for the very best. Captain Mike Mukula, thank you for talking to us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll take a quick break. NTV Tonight continues shortly.